to a Brawl Network production. This is a podcast for the best fans in the NFL.
Are you in the Mafia?
Am I in the what?
It's time for a Bills Brawl podcast.
Second down and 7, Kelly with the tide, touchdown! Bill Brooks!
Allen, deep shot, touchdown! On the line to Stephon Diggs.
And Thurman breaking tackles at the 22, inside the 10, touchdown Buffalo!
Mike Lindsley back with you. Let's talk some Buffalo Bills football, Bills Mafia. Make sure you get us at Bills Brawl on Twitter, and of course, at Network Brawl, all a part of the Brawl Network. At Mike L Sports for me on Twitter as well. And I am thrilled to chat some Buffalo Bills football with a fantastic talk show host of WGR 550 in Buffalo. Does a terrific job. At Nate Geary Sports on Twitter. Nate Geary, welcome to the program, bud. How are you?
Thanks, man. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here. You know, some things are happening. I don't know if you knew that, Mike.
Things are happening indeed, and I gotta say, man, I don't know how you felt, but when I heard that Matt Milano was back with the Bills at $44 million for 4 years, and it was only 5.3 against the cap in 2021, I couldn't believe. I was like, how in the world did the Shark Brandon Beane pull this one off? How does he do it? I was floored when this came down.
Floored's a good word, Mike. I think very surprised. I mean, baseline, I was surprised. I think probably everybody feels that way. I thought the only logical way Matt Milano was in a Bills uniform for 2021 was if he signed a one-year deal. The market just didn't bear out the way that he thought it was going to. He signs a one-year deal, gets into next offseason where he can make bank. There was really almost no scenario I saw the Bills extending him, and therefore extending him at what I don't think is going to end up being top of market. So I think ultimately the Bills got a hometown discount without asking for it. And not only that, they don't even see Matt Milano get to the opening of free agency or the legal tampering period. I think it says a lot about where they are as an organization, that one of their best players, a guy that they definitely identified as someone they wanted to keep, it was just going to be, how can we make this happen? I think I tweeted this out yesterday. I don't have any insider information to back this up. It's a hypothesis of mine. But I think ultimately what happened was Brandon Beane and the Bills, they approached Matt Milano. They said, here's kind of what we think. Here's our number based on our ability to continue to remain competitive, to give us the opportunity this year to still go out and add some players, add some pieces to this roster. We want to keep you long term, but we aren't really ready to set the market for the linebacker position for you. And I get the sense that his agent and his representatives started to gauge the interest on the market. This is not to say that maybe Milano wasn't going to get a lot of potential interest on the market. I do think Cleveland, I do think New England, I do think there are teams out there that would have spent and potentially made Matt Milano top of market value. But I think ultimately he looked at what the potential was going to be on the open market, and I don't think there was a big enough difference in term or money to say I'd rather go try this in Cleveland or try this in a market in a scheme that I know maybe doesn't fit me exactly. So I think this was a decision by Matt Milano's representation to take the offer that was on the table from the Bills. And from all the reports we're seeing, that actually surprised some within the organization as well.
Okay, so Milano back, they restructure a little bit with Mitch Morse. They cut Jefferson. They cut John Brown. Obviously the cap is at 182.5. What's next for this Bills team in terms of moving money around, cap, free agency, draft? We know probably, right, that two positions, they need a big monster edge rusher. They need a corner opposite of Trey White, maybe a little bit on the offensive line. Where are they going here next?
It's a great question. I think that the checklist is deep, but I also think they're in maybe one of the most unique off seasons in the modern salary cap era. So for me, I look at it like this. Offensive line is going to be a must. The report just came out of Matt Milano's cap hit at just about $8 million. So a great job keeping him under double digits in terms of cap hit and the millions. So keeping him at $8 million is going to give them some options. I suspect we still see moves made on the current roster, particularly with Mario Addison. I can see that number, either his cap hit getting getting taken down with either a decrease in overall salary or an outright cut. I see them adding another $2 million by potentially cutting Lee Smith, and or if he decides to ultimately retire, as some of the reports indicated that he was. I saw some reports that, there's some potential opportunity to gain additional salary cap space by extending Jerry Hughes an additional year. I could see that as an option. I could see another option is this team trying to go in and maybe re-sign and extend Stephon Diggs that might be able to free up additional cap space for this year as well. So lots of options to create more space if this team wants to go out and maybe make a couple of splashy moves. Jonnu Smith, maybe a tight end, or maybe if they like a particular offensive lineman, Gabe Jackson, the guard that was cut in Las Vegas. He was actually John Feliciano was Gabe Jackson's backup in Oakland. So I think you could potentially upgrade from Feliciano and get a starting guard in Jackson and potentially look to the draft to maybe replace Darrell Williams at right tackle. I just don't think those guys really fit into what they're maybe trying to do. I think from a I think from a locker room perspective, they'd like to have Darrell Williams and John Feliciano back, but I think from a scheme and where they need to get better, I'm not sure that it makes a lot of sense for them. So offensive line, I'd like to see them address the cornerback 2 situation. I know Malcolm Butler's name has been thrown around a little bit. He's able to sign with the team right away since he was just recently cut by the Titans. So the Bills have options to upgrade, but I think the main positions, and maybe my wish list starts with 3, and that's offensive line, tight end, and cornerback 2. For me, those are the real needs at least on the roster. But I think that we also can't really ignore their need for a legitimate pass rusher and edge player. And maybe I don't want to leave that on my top 3 either.
See, man, I know what you're saying with the scheme, but I love Feliciano. I mean, he's super versatile, and you can throw him in there at center if something happens to Mitch Morse. I don't know. I think he's a huge part of that offensive line, Nate.
Yeah, so I think what it comes down to is at $4 million, absolutely, I love John Feliciano, and I love the potential value he brings at that cap hit. I have zero interest in bringing him back at something like $8.5 million a year. That's just not something. I think his versatility is valuable. Do I think it's valuable enough? I mean, I think he was ranked in this 12 starts this year. I know he didn't give up a sack, but I think he was like 58th. Out of, or maybe it was 48th out of qualifying guards who have a certain number of snaps. So yeah, like I like him as a depth piece, as a guy that can move around a little bit. But they've made it clear they've decided to keep around Mitchell Morse. He's not going anywhere. So for me, do you want John Feliciano starting at right guard? I would say in a perfect world, no. Especially, I think they identified some of the things they need to do better in the run game, and I think one of those starts with maybe getting an upgrade at the right guard position. So if you're going to pay $8 million for your starting right guard in 2021, that's got to be a guy like, to me, like Gabe Jackson. It's got to be a guy like, some of the guys that have been getting released, Zietler from New York, or some of the other names that you might be hearing. So like those are the guys I may be willing to get to the $8 million mark. I'm just not really willing to get there for Feliciano, even though to your point, I do really love what he brings to the locker room. I just for me, he is a depth piece at best, and that's what he was brought in for, and that's what he was signed at. So you were getting more out of him at his value. I don't think you're going to get $8.5, $9 million of value in John Feliciano for the foreseeable future.
Nate Geary, WGR 550 with us here on the Bills Brawl. I'm Mike Lindsley. Give Nate a follow on Twitter. He's a must at Nate Geary Sports. At what point last year did you say to yourself, Buffalo Bills are legit?
At what point last year did I say that to myself?
Yeah. Like, legit as in, holy crap, like they could be deep playoff run, Final Four, gulp, Super Bowl good. Like when did you have the moment?
So I would say during the Rams game.
Me too.
Yes,
me too.
And then I kind of went back into my hole after the Kansas City and Tennessee games, respectively. I thought, okay, maybe I was giving this team too much credit, while maybe also recognizing that there were some injuries. No Matt Milano in those games, and we know how much better that defense was when Matt Milano was in the lineup. And I also think, that was probably the stretch of games where Josh Allen was maybe most affected by that subtle shoulder injury that I think maybe hurt some of his accuracy metrics and his ability in that offense. And I also think no John Brown hurt them. And I know this is a team that's going to be moving forward without John Brown, so something to think about. But I think it started in the LA game. It went away a little bit, and then it came right back in that Seattle Seahawks game. That Seahawks game really, to me, was the ultimate indicator. And then you get to that Monday night against San Francisco, and I said to myself, okay, this team is in a Super Bowl window. This isn't just a playoff team. This is a team that is going to be right up there with the Kansas City Chiefs. And, other than Indianapolis, I don't see another AFC team really necessarily taking that step. I think Baltimore, the Bills, and Kansas City are kind of the class of the AFC in that first tier, and then you've got Tennessee and Indianapolis kind of premiering that second tier. But I think the Bills are firmly going to be in that position again. It's just going to be this offseason, and the moves that they make over the next few weeks are going to really be interesting to see kind of how I feel after those moves are made. How
about the draft? First pick there at 30. It's obviously a crapshoot. We know Brandon Beane is aggressive, and will go get what he wants and knows that this window is open, as you just mentioned. Where may they go? Where might they go in that spot and beyond here? I know you talked about some of the needs that Buffalo. The list is long. I would agree, but from a draft perspective, what do you got?
Yeah, it's the tricky part of the draft because I think you can get a really high caliber interior or tackle, offensive line in this draft into the second round. I think if you want to punt on offensive line to the second round, I think you're still going to get a starter, whether or not you're going after guard or tackle. So I don't think they need to pigeonhole themselves into not taking the best available player, and I think that's kind of where this conversation is going, is how do you balance taking the best available player with taking a position where you really didn't fill that position in free agency and you need to do so in the draft. I think it's one of those that it's a balancing act that Brandon Beane's going to have to play. I think for me, what it comes down to is Najee Harris or Travis Etienne available at 30 for the Bills, and are they the best player on the board at the time? And I don't think that there's really an argument to be made if Travis Etienne or Najee Harris, running back from Alabama and Clemson, respectively, if those guys are on the board. And I know people don't really love the idea of a running back at 30, and I don't necessarily either, but I like to stick to the principles of drafting the best player available. And if one of those or both of those players are available at 30, it's a hard decision to make if you're trying to convince me that Jalen Mayfield or Liam Eichenberg, who I like a lot from Notre Dame as a potential cornerstone right tackle. It's going to be a hard sell for me that you're going to try to tell me that either of those players are ranked higher than a Harris or an ETN. So I think they're going to have a decision to make at 30 if one of or both of those running backs are there available for them, because I think the temptation to take them based on maybe in years past they're a top 15, top 10 pick. So for me, because of the reduced value of running backs, getting that extra value of a fifth year option for the running back position, I can see it as a potential. But I think they need to weigh the benefit of taking the best available to potentially taking a starting caliber tackle. And what's the drop off between a Jalen Mayfield and then whoever you could potentially get in the 70s, 80s, or 90s. So for me, what this comes down to is value, what positions you ultimately need, and maybe who ends up falling down to you at 30. So the Bills have Matt Milano locked up. I think the linebacker position is now set. I think that seals up a really important position for them, particularly in Sean McDermott's defense. So, yeah, I think there's a lot of routes they can go. I'm just really interested to see what ends up being available for this team when they get to the draft at 30.
A couple more quick ones for Nate Geary, WGR 550. Are there any words left about the Sabres? It's a Bills podcast, but a lot of listeners are Sabre fans too. I mean, this is Nate. I every single time they go to rock bottom, they find another level of rock bottom and another level of rock bottom. I mean, what's left to say about this? This is a disaster.
Yeah, I'm nervous about coining what we're watching right now as rock bottom, because I've coined rock bottom over the last 3 or 4 seasons, and I'd be worried about what could be lower than this. So yeah, it is it's unfortunate, kind of the point that they've gotten to. I just simply don't understand how the coach could even really make a case to still be a head coach in the NHL, much less for the Sabres team. And obviously this Eichel injury and potential long-term ramifications, he's probably going to miss the rest of the season. Is Dylan Cousins now going to miss extended time? Is Rasmus Dahlin now going to miss extended time? And the question becomes for me is how many young guys can you truly get in evaluation of over the next 30, 35 games or so here as the finality of this lost season, which, I mean, you can, I don't know how many of those you could coin over the last decade for the Sabres, but it's getting close to almost 100% of the last 10 years if this felt like a lost season. So it's really a difficult position this organization, in particular Kevin Adams, finds himself in. But yeah, I'm a little worried about coining it rock bottom because I don't even know how much further down it could go. But I'd rather not find out. I
mean, 10 years of no playoffs. The drought in the NFL is one thing with the Bills because, look, you've got 4 division winners, 2 wild cards. This year they expanded it to a third. I get it. But the NHL, half the teams make the playoffs. I mean, half the league is in there, and they've just been, nowhere near it. And these games are a joke. I mean, they're getting blown out. There's odd man rushes across the board. The goaltending looks peewee-ish. It's terrible. Do you think the Pegulas, they came in, they bought both, they got both the Sabres and the Bills, and I think the Sabres is more of like a Terry project because I just think he's in love with the French connection and the history and all that stuff. He really seems to love the Sabres more than Kim does. But they come in, they save Buffalo, they revitalize the downtown. Bills, Sabres, here to stay. The one Buffalo, the hope, all that stuff. Is it now time where maybe we can look and go, man, thanks guys, it was great to to save them and to keep both these clubs here, but God. You just can't own 2 pro sports teams, right?
Yeah, it's tough. They're proving that. It becomes really difficult, to sort of juggle where to put the resources. And right now, I think they've done the right things on the Bills side of things. They found someone they trusted, but it's not like they did it the first time. I mean, they went through Rex Ryan, and they kept around Doug Whaley, and I don't know, they went through the ringer, but ultimately they found a guy they believed in, and they handed the keys to the franchise to Sean McDermott, who then, obviously brought in Brandon Beane, and since the synergy and, I think the success speaks for itself. But on the Sabres side of things, I think genuinely that the Pegulas think that they walked into the NHL and they thought, we could do this. I think they walked into the NFL and said, this is too difficult of a league. We don't know enough to be dangerous. We need to hire people to make decisions. Whereas I think in the NHL and with the Sabres, I think they genuinely believe they can, that they can run things themselves. I've heard from plenty of people inside that organization that say the Pegulas are way even more hands-on than maybe even is being reported or is being presented. So I think ultimately for the Sabres to get out of the hell that they continue to find themselves in, is they're going to have to find someone. And I think they thought that guy was Ralph Krueger. I think he talks very similarly to Sean McDermott. He sort of speaks that sort of, I think, communication method that really spoke to the Pegulas, but I think at this time they've got to cut their bait, and they've got to do so before there's more collateral damage. I think keeping Ralph Krueger any longer is likely just going to stunt the development and further stunt the development of guys like Rasmus Dahlin, who you simply cannot afford to take any additional steps back because you're going to be approaching a point of no return on Dahlin pretty soon.
All right, final thing. I know you're a big golf guy. I would love to play with you someday. Although you'd have to give me. I can't even imagine how many strokes from the scores I see you shooting. What's in the bag? What are you messing with? I know you can't wait for the great weather to get here. Yeah, it's golf time soon, baby. Here we go.
Yeah, I got big windows in my apartment, and today is beautiful blue sky, sun's out, but it's chilly. So I've got the windows open, and it's just a very tempting situation looking out the window. But yeah, it's actually funny. I just bought a new pair of irons last week Friday, so. Bought myself a new pair of Mizuno irons. I've always been a TaylorMade guy my whole life. I'm leaving TaylorMade in terms of my irons and going over to Mizuno's. I've just never hit clubs as cleanly as those.
I have Mizuno's. Yeah, I like Mizuno.
They're fantastic clubs, man. And if you talk to golf guys, everybody kind of says like those are some of the best. So those are some of the best irons you can get on the market. So I'm really looking forward to getting those out on the course this summer and this spring. Obviously for me, it's just a matter of biding my time. I was just saying this to my buddy yesterday. We went to the driving range in the Dome here in Buffalo, and I was telling him, I said, they're talking about going out and playing on Sunday at one of the courses here that is opening. And I'm like, listen, guys, I'm desperate to play, but I'm not desperate to go out in 40 degrees and sopping wet conditions.
I hate that golf, man. Wet, muddy, cold.
Not for me. And frankly, if I'm being honest, we 2.5 weeks ago, my group of buddies, we took a trip down to Hilton Head. Got 5 days of unlimited golf in. I think I played 168 holes in 5 days. And had I not done that, I might be going out and playing. But I got my fix, and I can push it off a bit for the next couple of weeks.
By the way, I know he's a little off the beaten path, but God, Bryson DeChambeau is great for the tour, isn't he?
Oh my God! Listen, I am a fan of Bryson DeChambeau. I know a lot of my buddies. They rag on him a bit. I think he's easy. You can pick on him a little bit. Right. I don't think he's maybe necessarily I don't know. He's not necessarily media darling, so to speak. But I like Bryson a lot. I like what he's bringing to the game. I like that. I like that he's forcing guys to maybe think about their game and to change their game around to match what he's been able to do. So I like Bryson a lot. I love what he's doing in the game of golf, and I think I think it's fun. I am not the type of person that is drawn away from the distances some of these guys are hitting the ball now. I think the further you make these guys can hit, the thinner the fairways you're going to see, the higher the rough. I think the PGA and USGA should really welcome the distance game into tour, but recognize that if you're going to have guys that are carrying the ball 340, 350 yards, that you're going to have to make some tweaks to these golf courses, and I think that has sort of been underway. But I'm a big fan of Bryson. I get why people maybe not the biggest fans, but I'm a big fan.
Nate Geary, WGR 550 Buffalo, at Nate Geary Sports on Twitter. Thanks, man. Appreciate you.
My pleasure, Mike. And listen, man, anytime you want me on, you just let me know. We can do this whenever.
This is a perfect time for me to tell you about our friends from Manscaped. That's right, this tournament season, take care of your hair and holes with the best tools for the job. We're talking about our sponsors, Manscaped, the global leaders in male grooming from head to toe. When the clock winds down in March, be clutch and avoid the upset with Manscaped Performance Package to keep all of your hair and holes tamed. Start taking care of your man parts, folks, with 20% off plus free shipping today by going to manscaped.com and using code BRAWL for our exclusive offer. That's right, 20% off plus free shipping. Go to manscaped.com and use code BRAWL for our exclusive offer. Want to also mention to visit DraftKings.com, open up your account, and of course, wager like crazy. The most exciting place to experience the sweat, it's at DraftKings. How is daily fantasy better on DraftKings? Go to the website and check it out. It's unbelievable. You pick your favorite stars each week. You play in public contests against friends in a private league. Draft a new lineup whenever you want. You win cash prizes weekly, paid out as soon as the contest ends. DraftKings, you gotta go play. See why over 5 million people have played at DraftKings.com. DraftKings, daily fantasy sports, DraftKings.com. Thanks for listening to the Bills Brawl. As I always tell you, enjoy the games.